Hello, this is John Genet with ByoNetics. Uh, it's the 21st of May, 2014, here in the Florida Keys. I thought I would talk today about chelation therapy. It's a popular therapy to, that is used to uh, extract heavy metals from cellular structures. Uh, as I've mentioned before in my video on vaccinations, uh, pharmaceutical companies are allowed to now stack vaccines, which means whenever I was vaccinated back in the 40s, you had a small vial, had a rubber top on. You put the needle through the top. You extracted uh, the correct dose of vaccine, right? But it was a small structure, right? Now they're allowed. Pharmaceutical companies are now allowed to stack vaccines, which means that they're in a much larger vial, and they're allowed to be able to stack or layer on top of each other these vaccinations, right? Uh, it saves on storage cost. The problem is that when these chemicals move back and forth, if they're moved abruptly, they can cause friction, uh, catch on fire, and explode. So they use a stabilizer called thimerosal. Thimerosal, when injected to the bloodstream of an infant, becomes ethyl mercury. Ethyl mercury is the second most dangerous neurotoxin on the planet, next to mercury itself. It invades the blood-brain barrier within 2 minutes, becomes a part of the cellular structure, and within 2 hours, it rearranges the DNA structure to create what is known as Fragile X. Right. So, um, chelation therapy is advertised and promoted to be able to remove mercury. Right. It uses a chemical called DMSA. It's a agent that is strong enough to invade the blood-brain barrier of the brain, and it uh, mainly moves through the cellular structure, extracts out lead, aluminum, certain other toxic chemicals, but it does not remove mercury, right? Uh, Ethyl mercury is a non-organic chemical, which means that it becomes a part of the cellular structure. So you can't remove it to where you have like lead and aluminum. They, they lay on top of the structure, and the DMSA basically washes it away, moves it down through the blood moves into the liver, and it exits out the bile, is how that works, all right? And the over time, the result can be positive, but not for the removal of mercury poisoning, right? Uh, they we now have data that tells us that the child has to be weighing at least 60 pounds to be able to go through chelation therapy. Uh, the family has to be notified that chelation therapy can take up to 7 years to produce any positive results. And what you have to understand is that as chelation is applied through intravenous application into the vein, right? Uh, when it brings out these toxic chemicals, moves into the blood moves into the organs, and the child basically is getting re-poisoned with these chemicals. The child creates a low-grade fever, have symptoms as if they had the flu, all right, because the immune system is trying to attack these chemicals uh, to preserve the well-being of the chemical structure. Uh, but the child suffers throughout this process. And chelation therapy is fairly expensive. Uh, the, the results can be positive over time, but the process can be very painful as far as the child is concerned. It can take a lot of time, becomes very expensive uh, monetarily. You can wind up spending a lot of money. And I don't know uh, families that are willing to commit 7 years to this process to in the belief that it's going to remove mercury poisoning when in actuality it doesn't remove mercury, right? It can remove lead, aluminum can be built up through the use of deodorants. It's used in cosmetic. There's a lot of things that it uses, that aluminum is used in our everyday experience through life and the products that we use. And over time they build up and they have a lot of the same symptoms of autism. You can lose the ability to mentally focus. You can have certain detachments emotionally. It can create the symptoms of hyperactivity. So a lot of parents believe that they're removing mercury when in actuality they can't remove mercury, but they're removing lead and aluminum. Not that that's negative. The release of that can be positive over time, right? But I don't know if anybody's willing to spend 7 years to have that happen over time, right? And to go through the expense of doing so, right? So it's something that you have to be very careful of. If anybody suggests the use of chelation therapy for the reasons of removing mercury poisoning, then you need to realize that that's not possible, right? Because the stabilizing agent, the preservative in vaccines, thimerosal, when injected to the body of an infant, becomes ethyl mercury. Ethyl mercury is a non-organic chemical, and that means that it becomes a part of the cellular structure. It's not laying on top of the cellular structure, so it can't be washed away over time, right? And it bleeds these chemicals into the blood. The blood moves through the organs, and the immune system tries to fight these and creates the symptoms, flu-like symptoms, and it can last an extended period of time. I don't recommend it, realizing that I'm not a doctor, I'm not practicing medicine with a license, but I have had enough families over time that have used chelation therapy. Very few have gotten any positive results out of it. All of them have spent a lot of money, and if they chose to go do it again, they would probably not do so because of the effect, the negative effect on the child, and the negative effect on your bank book. So keep that in mind. If you need to talk to me about this or any other aspects of autism as it relates to your child's experience, you can call me at 1-800-280-2802. And I reside in Florida, here with ByoNetics. That's Eastern Standard Time, so always keep that in mind when you're trying to call me. But I'd be more than happy to talk to you. So you guys take care, and hopefully this information has been valuable. Bye. Take care.